excited to talk to
Yo,
you about all the things.
hey, let's rock. Yeah, I'm excited too. It's been a minute.
So, for anyone who doesn't know, Walt is Chief Experience Design Officer at VMLY&R. Got named like yesterday Changemaker of the Year on social media by
Yeah,
Adweek or 2 days
yeah.
ago. I mean, invented ads. Apparently, every ad we hate, you invented, which is the thing that I learned about you before we met. And so I'm just super excited you're here because what we do on this show and then with the replay is I really feel like what was special about social audio is we got to have access to all these people who we might not get to have conversations
Oh
with
yeah,
otherwise.
yeah,
It's always
absolutely.
like, I'm sorry.
No, I said absolutely. Yeah,
Oh,
you're right.
yeah, it was always like you had to have an invitation to the room, or if you were hearing from someone really interesting, they would like really dumb it down for the public. And I like the fact that social audio is a space where you could have like a real meaningful conversation with someone and anyone could come up and ask a question and learn more and engage. Um, which brings me to let's dive right in. Chief Experience Design Officer, like what does that even mean? Like for someone who hears that and is like, what is that? What do you do?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out. 2 weeks in. No, no, no. Let me stop. No, it's interesting. So that role. So my partner is a chief creative officer, right? In theory, we kind of do similar things, but a chief creative officer kind of sets the vision for a brand, right? Or for a rollout or product release, and so on and so forth. And my job is to partner with that individual to help kind of push it in a direction so that I can then work with my organization to take that idea and run it across every single platform, right? So chief creative officers will typically, think about the overarching brand kind of concept, so on and so forth. In most cases, focus primarily on the film, right? And then I take that and then I say, okay, here's how we blow it out across like out of home, CTV, social, like through websites, through app development, through AR, VR, metaverse, so on and so forth. So we're kind of individuals that have a more thorough understanding of the digital landscape and transformative technology to find smarter ways to engage consumers.
Cool. So, what does that mean for someone who's not in marketing? You know what I mean? Like, what does that
Yep.
mean for me? Like, if I'm a business owner, do I need to be in those places? Do I just need to follow you and learn about it? Like, what does that mean for me?
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you talk about, even small business owners. It's hard, right? When you think about how you actually brand and go to market with your product, with your brand, one so on and so forth. It's hard because you don't often have the millions of dollars that a Coca-Cola or a New Balance or all these other folks or Google has, right? So when you're playing with a smaller bucket of money, it's where do I, how do I reach these individuals in the areas that actually matter and make the most impact and get the most ROI for my investment? So it actually in many parts will take more research for these individuals than the big guys who have the money to just play everywhere. So when they start to think about branding and whatnot, it's, yes, kind of what I do is important, right? Because I'm focused more on like the digital ecosystem. Because like not every person, not every small business owner needs to go out and shoot some big budgeted thing to get your thing on a commercial, right? At the smallest kind of point, it's about understanding your audience, right? And you can do that by way of a simple thing like Google Analytics. Every site has access to that or can put that in at no cost. And then by way of understanding who they are, figure out like what they do, where they go, and how you target them. You could spend as little as $20. So what I do is, again, when I'm thinking of digital kind of ecosystem and where to put, a brand, I lean heavily on my strategists to give me the insights and understanding of where they are. Same thing a small business owner would do by way of a Google Analytics or even your Instagram. You have the ability to actually understand who your audience is right there, where they're at, their location, whether they're male or female, age group, and so on and so forth. So, I wouldn't necessarily say, hey, they need to go out and do everything that I do, but I think they need to kind of, think smart around who your audience is and then where you can actually spend the right amount of money to actually reach them in a way that's impactful and memorable.
That's cool. That's really interesting. I like thinking about kind of how it operates in one space and how it operates in the other.
Yeah.
And forgive me, I am missing about every third word. So if there's a slight delay on your end, it's because I want to make sure that I hear the end of what you're saying
No
before
worries. No
um,
worries.
I ask the next question. Tell me something that you're allowed to tell us that you're working on right now. That's really cool. I want to know what you're
Ooh.
working on.
That's a tough question.
Or can you tell something
Because
that you
so
just wrap that you're allowed to tell us that's really cool? What's something
yeah,
you can share with us to give people a better picture of like the kind of work that you do?
yeah. So we did. So 70% of my work is on health side of the world, right? And I've been doing that for the first time for the past like 3 years. Now I've been in this year in my career for 22 years, and it focused so much on like like auto and like retail and CPG and all that type of stuff. Um, but now with this focus on health, it's been really interesting because especially with this pandemic, the past couple of years, I feel as though you're able to do work that truly makes a difference in people's lives. Like we're literally like they say, oh yeah, we're not saving lives. At the end of the day, we are. So I think what's been interesting for
But
me is
interestingly, you just said we're not saving lives, but you're doing so much in health right now. So we're going to circle back to
yeah,
that in a minute.
yeah. It's people say we're not saving lives, but we are in the health space. You are. We most certainly are. So I'd say that probably the most rewarding work has been working with Pfizer, right? So Pfizer and Comirnaty and that brand and being able to actually take that out to market. I mean, it's the biggest brand, most well known, recognized brand in the world. And we started work with them about a year and a half ago, a year and change ago, and that's just been really inspiring, right? Because this is like a global pandemic, something we've never seen in our lifetimes, and to be able to actually work with a partner to actually literally save lives across the globe has been wild. But even on another area like I worked on a product for rheumatoid arthritis, and I can tell you this is a great example of like what I do. Right, when you talk about experience design is primarily around understanding the consumer journey, where an individual goes, and then finding touch points in where they're going to actually reach them in ways that matter, right, in the right time, right place, and all that bullshit. I hate that slogan, but in doing so, what we ended up doing was we created this experience where when you wake up in the morning, you're able to talk to Alexa and essentially ask they'll ask how you feel, right, on a scale of 1 to 10. How do you feel right now? 10 being the worst. 8. Okay, well, we've seen from your Fitbit that last week you actually ran a lot less miles and you or walked a lot less miles than you walked this week. Why don't we actually start the morning off with some exercises? Here's some good routines that actually help your legs, right? And then it might help you with some different stretch routines and so on and so forth. You go out to the supermarket, you're actually going to buy food. Now the types of food you eat affect the way you feel. So then you open
Mm-hmm.
up this AR experience. And with this AR experience, you actually have an individual who stands next to you who can then recommend different types of food based on what you've ate in the past and based off the fact that you said today you were at 8. Right? It's this whole connected experience. So then when you go running, we then track that information. And then when you go to your doctor next week, your doctor could then open up this app and actually have a full kind of understanding of your life over the past couple of weeks and what you've done and how much you've walked and exercised and the food you ate and how you felt, and be able to then cater medications and things of that nature to your current kind of body's way your body is acting. So it's that when we talk about experience design, it's that type of thing. It's like how do you connect with people at different moments of their life every single day in ways that are really impactful.
You know what's cool about that? Several things are cool about that. The first is I like the fact that they start with like that rating of how they feel because it's going to like reinforce for them
Yeah,
also. Like they're literally participating it. They're seeing the
sure.
difference themselves in that check-in. Like that's proven that that's going to reinforce it for them. And then when you talk about the integration against sharing that data with their doctors, when we think about how many times people get things wrong, right? It's proven scientifically that they
Yeah,
underestimate this, they overestimate that. Um, and that it's this level of um, it goes back to what you were saying earlier about the tracking, but it's, as you said, kind of in a really intentional way, moving them towards outcomes. And like that's
yeah,
what I think is really cool is that um, advertising doesn't have to be predatory. I think sometimes people think that we're tracking data in a predatory way.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
I like kind of reframing that you're tracking all of this data in a way to really advance like what they're doing in their daily life. Though, can we get controversial for a minute? Because I feel like that's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
you do.
yeah, yeah. Go for it. Go for it. Yeah.
I actually saw this tweet yesterday that suggested that women should delete all apps that track their cycles based on what's probably going to happen with Roe v. Wade. So it's also
Wow.
interesting to think about how something that can be like a really good and innovative and powerful integrative idea 2 months ago, based on the political climate, could be, problematic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super like Black Mirror, right? First of all, we could go so far left on that Roe vs. Wade thing, but we won't this morning. But I have a mouthful to say on it. Here's the thing, you know. innovation today is different from innovation 15, 20 years ago, right? Innovation 15, 20 years ago for a brand was how can we create the most intrusive fucking thing possible to make sure that someone sees me, right? We're going to do these huge like overlays and like these floating ads, and we're going to, break shit up on your page and takeovers and all that. And it was super annoying for a lot of people, right? So the pivot was then, okay, well, how do we then create these experiences that allow people to engage and open up something bigger? So you had things like expandable banners or push down banners, right? And then as we moved over to mobile devices, those screen and that real estate, minimize a great deal. So you can't do all that stuff, you just don't have the space. So it became a like, okay, well, the use of data and understanding who this individual is, right? And so creativity became this use of, all right, well, if I know that I have location data on your app, right, which every single person has, location services on every mobile device, right, and there are many SDKs that are out there that are SDK, software development kit. It's a snippet of code that's actually put in a multitude of sites, apps, and so on and so forth, that gives advertisers access to your data as well, like where you live and understanding of where you live, because I see you at the same location or address between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. 7 days a week. That's probably where you live, right? And then understanding of where you go, and then now taking that and creating this understanding of who an individual is, and then targeting them at the right moments. And then they started laying on with third-party data, and you have things like Axiom to tell me what you buy, right? And so like you get into this moment of being able to, like, I could say like, all right, I'm going to target Sarah, and right, and I don't know your name though, I just know your mobile ID number. And Sarah is super healthy because I see Sarah has these health apps, and then I see Sarah going to the gym 5 days a week, and this is the gym she goes to. It's about 5 miles away from her house, and I notice she lives in the suburbs. But then I know she goes to Whole Foods every Saturday. When I see her go to Whole Foods every Saturday, she buys these type of health foods, but she also buys Coca-Cola. And I know that she goes to bed every Friday night by about 10 o'clock. Probably had a long week, so I know that this Friday night I'm going to target her for at about 9:55 because I see her mobile device sitting upside down like this. I'm assuming she's laying in bed on her back, and I'm going to give her an ad for Pepsi, right? Because I know when she goes to the store tomorrow, she might now buy it. So there's so many ways that they're being creative around it. But to your point now, I think we as a society have come to this point of, wow, they're tracking all this shit about me and it's really annoying and I don't like it. Well, what I tell people is like, okay, well, great. Well, like, would you rather, like, I would rather get ads for like, Nikes as opposed to like pantyhose. Just my preference, right? Like, but you can't get me
So,
wrong.
yeah, no. And again, forgive me if I'm getting off on a
No, it's
wrong.
cool.
The delay's crazy. There are two really important things that you said there that I think are super interesting. The first, like you said, is that we demonize the idea that we get personalized ads. But like to your
Yep.
exact point, I can't tell you how many, like the jacket I wore yesterday, Nordstrom's sent me a personalized ad. Half my athleisure is because Carbon 38 targets me based on what I would, and I'm grateful for that. I would much rather see
Yep.
like things related to my hobbies come up in
Yep.
my Instagram feed, which I have a very high hit rate on personally,
Mhm.
than like, lumber. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like that would never be relevant to me. So I think that's an interesting point. You also, because one of the things, Walt, that I think is so powerful about the work that you do is not just everything you've done in the advertising space, but everything that you do as an activist and everything that you do to I think to increase representation, everything that you do to nuance the story so that
Yep.
it's not one note. And so one thing that's interesting to me when you're like, let's look at Sarah. She lives in the suburbs. She goes to Whole Foods. She works out. She drinks Coca-Cola. I don't drink soda. That's off in my avatar, but that's okay. Um, you just did that talk that was on your Instagram feed where you were saying like, do you know me, but you don't know me, about when
Yeah.
people make their avatars too one-dimensional and they get it wrong. And I wonder if you can kind of hone in on that a little bit. Like if we're talking about all of the benefits of coming up with these avatars, like where are people screwing it up?
Yeah. I think the thing is for brand today, authenticity is everything, right? But being authentic means you need to understand who I am and really understand who I am, because the problem is, we have these teams of individuals who will go out and create personas with your data, right? So they take that, hey, Sarah does this is where she goes, this is where she works out, etc. Now let's build a persona, and persona is for Sarah, whatever. She is the health mom, right? This is our health mom, and a health mom is between the age of 30 and 40 years old, and she does this, and her income is this. And we kind of stop at that, right? So my point with what I was saying the other day is that in order to target me, right, in order to be authentic, you have to know me. You have to understand my lived experiences. You have to understand more than just the places I go and the things that I buy. And I think that's really hard for a lot of brands to do, right? We often make mistakes because of the fact that, we don't even have people working on the creative or the strategy and the insights that are the people that you're trying to reach. So, I don't mean to go left, but this is why, things like diversity are important, things like
No, I
having
want you
women.
to. Let's talk
Yeah,
about it.
yeah, it's like having, look, if I'm making a campaign around tampons, you better believe there better not be all like 15 men making that campaign, and that's it. Like that's just fucking
Oh, that
ridiculous.
law. Just
Right.
saying. Continue.
Well, right, right. But like, my point is like you have to have a woman in the room. Why? Because a woman understands tampons, right? It's the same thing. Like if you're speaking to people of color, specifically black people, or you're talking to people who, have a disability, you need to have someone with a disability in the room who gets it. Right. So when I say do you know me, right? It's like most times it's no. We want to make a quick dollar, but we're not going about it in the right way when it comes to the work.
Talk to me about Walt, because I think it's important to have conversations where we really break things down that people get wrong.
Yep.
And I'll tell you one of the like worst experiences I had on Clubhouse. Um, it was my first like week or so there, and there was someone on stage, and I think that he thought that he was like basically it was everything that I think white people get wrong about hiring black talent.
Mhm.
Because basically he was like, well, if you have a white programmer and a black programmer, you hire the black one because just the fact that they've been black in America means that they're bringing a different base of experience. And I was like, that's actually a harmful notion. Like you should have HR people on your team who know that there are black programmers out there who are equally as talented,
Yeah.
more innovative, more experienced, like have transferable skills that they can fulfill the role. You don't just hire them regardless of their expertise because they're black. Like that's where you get into tokenism and everything like that. And again, I think that there are well-meaning, maybe white hiring managers who will listen to this and be like, oh, I need to get a black person on my team. I need to get a woman on my team. I need to, and like not, first of all, not understand that they need to be recruiting more than one person for the role and how to find someone who's qualified. And then, second of all, how to support that person when they're there so
Yep.
they're not like the one in the room that everyone turns and looks at and is like, well, black people like this? Well, you know what I mean? Like, my ex husband
Yeah.
used to talk about that all the time that whenever they were recruiting like a very high black recruit, they'd like look at him and be like, Mac, would that work for you? And he'd be like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so let's talk about it. Let's talk about what people get wrong if they're going to go about hiring diverse talent in a meaningful way. It could be in advertising, it could be in general.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think you hit them all in the head. Like I don't even know how to add to that. But you're right. Here's the thing. Individuals can be set up for failure and not know it, right? It's like you go out and you hire someone just because they look a certain way or talk a certain way, so on and so forth. Then you like drop them off in this role and they have no support. Then they look bad, and then things don't go right, right? And then what ends up happening is that person loses their job, gets fired, so on, or laid off, so on and so forth. And then now you have this notion of, well, you'll have this thought from everyone that says, maybe we shouldn't hire another black person, or maybe we shouldn't hire another woman, or so on and so forth. So it's a challenge. And here's the thing: people aren't taking the time to really find the talent. Right? To your point, there's lots of talent out there in a lot of different spaces. A year and a half ago, when all these agencies are coming out and saying, "Oh my God," and brands are saying, "Oh my God, we want to hire black talent, but we can't. We don't know where they are. We can't find them." And I was like, "That's bullshit. There's tons of people out there. We can't find them." So I did one post to LinkedIn with a Google like a Google spreadsheet saying, "Hey, if you're a black or brown creative of color, add your name to this list." In about 3 days, I had over 1,000 people, right? And then so decided, okay, we're gonna Ron, a buddy of mine, Ron Lewis, and I decided, all right, let's like make a full database of this information. And now we have over like 2,800, creatives of color on this platform we call diversecreatives.com. Where like we had that in a matter of weeks, right? So people need to get a little more creative with how they find the talent. Problem also is that, you know, most folks will think, oh, okay, we need to find black talent. Let's just go to Howard University. Let's just go to Morgan State. Like there's tons of black talent that are at state schools too, right? So there's this default, this thinking of like, oh, let's just go to these default places to actually find the talent. People aren't doing the work to actually go out and really find these individuals, and it's unfortunate.
Well, and talk to me about Black Madison Ave.
Yep.
Like, this is really what we're talking about
Hmm.
anyway. Because one of the things, and again, I'm going to bring it back to um, football coaching for a minute, because again, it was
Yep.
just something that I witnessed for like a decade with just massive issues with systemic racism in elevation
Hmm.
in the hiring. So, like, for example, generally, right, you'd have these young Black coaches. They were the graduate assistant, they were the defensive backs coach, and they would just never get promoted
Yep.
along the way. As you said, it would be like the same few people who, you have like everyone, like the same guy would always interview as the one for the head
Yep.
coaching position. Maybe you have one, but the thing is that the fact that they weren't getting elevated to coordinator positions within the fact that there would only be 1 in 11 minority coach on every staff, like they just, at some point, the guys who were so experienced had to transition off. And it
Yeah.
just kept happening, kept happening, kept happening. And then they would be like, oh, well, there's no one who's experienced enough to be head coach. And it would be
Yeah.
like, well, because you never promoted them to coordinator and leagues and moved them around and so on and so forth. And so I'm kind of curious. The documentary was amazing,
Hmm.
and it was so interesting because you all were sitting around talking about how awarded you are, and yet how few Black creatives there are in the C-suite. Like,
Hmm.
why is it like that in advertising? What's happening structurally that there's this just gap where Black creatives aren't being promoted?
Yeah, it's a lot of things. I want to say it's not just it's not just advertising space. It's many spaces, right? Um, Here's the thing. I think there's a general fear of losing, right? And when I say a general fear of losing, it's white men specifically, right? Where this feeling of like, oh, and I'm not saying all, right? But like this feeling of, oh, you know, if me and Becky and Jen and John we're all best friends and known each other since high school and built this business together, and our kids know each other, they're roommates in college. So if I create this role, like this space, like I can't create space because that means one of my buddies now has to go, and I can't do that to them. Um, Tables can be extended, right? There's a lot of opportunities you can create, but there's been this fear of just like losing. If I give to you, that means I lose, and I don't have this particular thing. Um, it's when you look at, I'll just because I know my space. When I look at the advertising space, the agency space, yeah, it's pretty sad, and I liken it to an article I actually wrote. Gosh, like 3 4 years ago, where I called it the black quarterback effect in advertising, right? And to your point about those roles, we often we saw in the '80s there was barely any black quarterbacks, right? And then a few came out like Randall Cunningham, and then later on like Mike Vick, and these are individuals that changed the
Yeah.
game. But why you didn't see many is because of quarterback, which very much so like a creative director, right, or chief creative officer, they run the show, right? They are throwing the passes, they are making the calls. It is a creative director's idea that is sold through to a brand that makes the agency a shit ton of money, right? So I say that because in football, like we saw a few kind of break ground and change of the weight. Like they weren't sitting in the pocket and throwing anymore; they were running the ball, and they changed it entirely. And
Mm-hmm.
now you look out there; there's tons of black quarterbacks out there. So I look at our space, and it is very similar. This feeling of like, well, we don't want them to run the show because I don't know that they can actually do it. So when you look at our space, yes, there are 9 black executive creative directors in a major holding agency in the United States. If you look at those roles in the United States in those agencies, there are over 1,300 people in those roles. So we're like talking like 0.01%, right? Is black. In the C suites, there are 4 of us, I believe, only 4 of us, right? Which is pretty absurd when you think about it. So it's yeah, I mean, change needs to happen, but again, there's this fear. It's funny. It's like when we saw the Me Too movement happen, like white men were super scared, right? Rightfully so, because they're like, oh shit, I don't want to fucking be next. But you saw change happen for women like super fast. It was crazy, right? Like women that were like directors skip senior directors went to vice president, went from vice president, skip senior vice president, went to CMO, and we see a vast amount of change. I don't know that there's any fear of letting people of color in right now, right?
And
There's
you
no real
help
need.
people to account for that. That actually brings me to
Yep.
like your interview with, for example, Gary Vaynerchuk, when you were
Yep.
like, you promised this a year ago during George Floyd. Where are you? Have you talked to him since then? Like, where is he? How's it going? I'm curious. Or like
Yeah.
other people who's kind of feed you out of the fire.
Yeah. So it's I've used my platform and the small reach that I have to speak to the right people. And I want to make sure I make this really clear. I don't necessarily say that I like to call people out. I like to call people in and engage in the conversation. And why I do that publicly on my live is because transparency is everything, right? It's easy to say a few words in a social media post, or it's easy to kind of like send a few emails or talk to a person inside. Like, I think people need transparency, right? And the reason why is because I did this for the past couple of years. Everyone posted that black square, and then it was like disappeared, right? Everyone promised all this money, and then all these different updates and diversity and everything disappeared. So my point was, if I can actually talk to these people and have transparent
Mhm.
conversations in public, then we can get someplace. So yeah, Gary Vaynerchuk is one of them. We still talk to this day, actually become friends. But like, I did a live for him. I interviewed him with a couple other people on a panel, and he said that, oh yeah, by this whatever date, I'm gonna have a black person in my C-suite. That date came and went, and so I did a social media post online on Twitter and on Instagram, and I took that clip where he actually said it and tagged him, asked him where he'd been and how it's going, in a polite way, didn't make him look like an asshole or anything. And he ended up reaching out. We spoke on the side, and then I said, can we do this live? He said, absolutely. And we went live and spoke about it. On our live, I'm sure his comms team was like, what the fuck? Because on our live, he said he was going to go then and put 4 black people in his suite, and in C-suite, and he did that, right? So, but that also worked because when we have these conversations out in public and he makes those type of promises, and then press like Fast Company, Adweek, Ad Age, and all people are there, and then they write on it then the very next day. Now
Mhm.
you have that in writing, right? So it's been interesting.
And I also like hope too, you have so many people who, to your point, are like Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary Vaynerchuk, like he's such a role model. And so,
Mhm.
I mean, also like props to him that he would have the conversation, because to your
Oh
point, I
yeah,
think more people who are willing to engage, be transparent, be open, have conversations. And actually towards that end, I invited my friend Steph Jansen up, who you guys connected on IG,
yep,
because she's also super passionate about DEI issues. Before we move back to advertising, I
yep.
wanted to give her an opportunity. Steph, do you want to come on video or just audio to say hi to Walt?
I can say hi on audio. I'm still losing my voice, which is so bananas. Walter, it is so nice to see you here on
Hey, it's a pleasure to
Fireside.
meet. Pleasure to meet, Stephanie.
So nice. And by the way, I am also really loving this conversation. I think the only thing I want to drop in here before you continue this amazing conversation is just, Walter, as odd as this is going to sound, thank you for the work that you do. And I mean that because, it's interesting whether you are in the DEI space, as in my example, as a white woman,
Mhm.
or whether you are literally born into the space of DEI because you are someone of color representing diverse communities. We don't have enough people that are doing this work amongst all communities. And I think this is part of where Sara and I feel so aligned on amplifying the voices of people of color, of minoritized communities who we need in the mix, quite frankly. We are missing out on incredible talent, incredible leadership, incredibly diverse voices that make end product better, that makes business to business, business to consumer businesses better. We're missing out as a planet. And so enough already. It's a little selfish on my part. We have brilliant people that don't have a seat at the table. So enough already. But Walter, it's brilliant to have you here. Sara, thank you for
Oh, thank
hosting
you.
another amazing conversation. And I'm just going to sit back and enjoy this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate you.
Steph, you are awesome. I am sorry. I'm literally having the same sound issue with this interview that you have with Chris Boss. So I caught fractionally what you said, but I'm so grateful you joined. And anyone else who's here, if you want to join in the conversation, if you have a question for Walt, if there's anything you'd like to add, that's one of the things that we do here. So, one of the questions that I have for you is that we always talk about innovation.
Yep.
And, literally, like we talked about it a little bit earlier, but like you've had a career starting with like the patents and the digital ads and everything, now moving into experience where, like, do you just see things differently? Do you just have more courage than other people? Do you read more? Like, how is it that you're someone who's actually innovating when I feel like so many people are talking about it?
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a good question. I don't know. I'll be honest with you, I've never been a super hard worker, right? But I've been someone who, when put on the spot, I can think a little differently or think out of the box, right? I think everyone has it. But for me, I really kind of start with problems, right? So every idea every idea I've come up with is built around like, what's the problem that I have with it? Right? Like, what about it do I dislike? And if I could fix this, how would I address that? So I'll give you a great example. So when I invented skippable pre-roll, right? So for the folks who may or may not know, skippable pre-roll, it is, when you go to a video, YouTube is like, it's all over the place there, right? You get the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then the skip button, and then you could skip the ad. Great. So I actually invented that when I was at Viacom, right? And so when I was at Viacom, it was like 30-second spots are going crazy. We were then 30-second pre-rolls, I'll say, and everyone was dabbling in the market with, okay, well, how can we do shorter content? What if it was like 10 seconds? Does a 10-second work? Does a 15 or 20-second work? And we were doing tons of white papers and research around it. And as we were working on this, I just thought to myself, my God, like, I can't stand, like, who wants to sit in front of 30 seconds? Like, I shouldn't have to do that now in a digital space. So, unlike TV where we're forced, right? So what we saw in research and our usability testing was that pre-roll would come up, someone would minimize the screen and go to another browser, open it up, read something else. When they hear it change, they'd come back to it. So my thought was, well, wow, what if I could actually just skip this ad entirely? But that would piss brands off. They wouldn't want that. So the first version of skippable pre-roll, I called Port a Pass. And I actually did it with I believe that was Pepsi, right? Pepsi. And so the idea was, okay, well, I'm going to put a 30-second spot for Pepsi, and then on the lower left-hand corner, I'm going to have a little Pepsi bottle. When I roll my mouse over that Pepsi bottle, it's going to turn the Pepsi bottle upside down, and it's going to pour Pepsi all in the video window. That whole fill-up thing is going to be 5 seconds. As soon as that 5 seconds is done, and it fills up the screen, we're going to skip into the content that they want, and then we'd say, we had voiceover that'd say, this skip was powered by Pepsi. So for me, I was like, great, well, I skipped some shit that I didn't want, but then it's a more engaging format because I've now interacted with the brand, right? Which we weren't doing in a 30-second spot. So that was the first, oh shit, there's clapping here. That was the first version of it. So again, it was like, it always starts with the problem. Like, what's the thing that annoys the fuck out of me about it? And how can we actually create something around that?
How do you find the right problem to solve?
Right strategy team. right. So
oh my gosh, my sound just went out and I don't know what you said.
I said, no, it's okay. I said the right strategy team, right? The right, you have to have the individuals who are giving you the correct insights. Because I can tell you, if you don't have a right team giving you the right, data and insights and all that around a brand, you're going to, you'll never succeed. It just won't work. Right. So, that was for me, like, that, especially now on the agency side, the one thing I love is that we have, at VMLY&R, we have a giant team of strategists, and we have like a whole culture studio and all these people that spend so much time understanding our audience, understanding the product. And then when they're giving me a creative brief, like, I do no work. They tell me everything. Here's everything you need to know about the product. Here's everything you need to know about the people that are buying it. And this is how we think you should position it. Excuse me. And that gives me a lot to work with and allows me to kind of do the things that we do. Earlier on in my career at places like Viacom, I lead into data by way of, I created, me and my team, we created the first biometric usability lab. And that was interesting because for the first time, we were measuring emotional state of an individual when they engaged or interact with the brand. So we were doing that by essentially hooking, it looked like someone was literally in the ICU, things on their heads, hands, and body. And we were pulling things like pupil dilation, arousal, which is sweat on the palms, eye tracking, facial expressions, heartbeat, So with all of this, I could tell you what works based off color, call to action, speed of animation, position on page, everything. So I was able to take my ideas, bring them in a room, test them by a particular demographic, and then bring them out, refine them, bring them back in, test it, and then go sell to a brand and guarantee effectiveness, which with innovation you can never do, which is why it's hard to sell through innovative solutions.
Yeah, I think that's so cool because I think, first of all, it's just cool in general, but also it's cool because it's interesting to me when you can kind of see like a baseline idea play at every level. So for example, again, getting back to like lots of times if you're like, that starting out person, that small business owner, that solopreneur, you don't have a team or whatever, we'll literally just start with the baseline question of like, how do you want them to feel? When they see this, when they experience this, how do you want them to feel? And the fact that you were able to build that out and track that and, be like, it's not just a philosophical question of like, I want them to feel inspired. I want them to feel, enlightened. I want them to feel comfortable. I want them to feel whatever. But like literally the fact you're saying, let's track that. Let's test it. Let's see. Let's, see what that experience is like for them. Again, getting back to something that I said earlier, it's really interesting to me because, again, so often there's this like, almost this negative stereotype that people in marketing are doing that to be predatory. They're doing
Mm-hmm.
that just because they want to sell more to you. But how
Yeah.
interesting is it when we like use that power for good? And it's to your point saying like, if you're going to see these ads anyways, if you're going to buy these products anyways, if you're going to all that stuff anyways, why shouldn't it be an experience that could almost be designed for you that adds something, valuable into your day, into your consumer journey?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Here's the thing. On average, I read an article a few years ago that says something like we on average see between something like 4 and 10,000 ads a day, right? And so when you think about that for a minute, like if I guarantee every single person, if we talk to every single person in this audience here and said, what's the last ad you like? Did you see an ad today? Right? I guarantee you everyone will say, yes, of course we have. Right. But now if I'd ask, do any of you actually remember the brand? I guarantee like 99% of people here would say no. And for the 1% that might say yes, it's probably because it's highly relevant, and it's likely to have been like on Instagram, right? Because it's that native experience, and you're going through, and it feels like the rest of the content. So we have to work on, and it's not, again, it's like we're not trying to get people to do shit that they don't want to do, right? Like advertising is about one thing, right? You said feel a certain way, exactly. It's about eliciting an emotion. How do I get someone to engage with something that they want to engage with, right? So doing
Yeah.
that really well means, how can I be creative? How can I get them to see it? How can I understand who they are and how they engage and build something in and around that experience?
Totally. And the other thing I think is cool too is that the thoughtfulness that you can build in. So, for example, Mother's Day is coming up, right? So, like, if people need to buy a Mother's Day present anyway, thoughtful advertising can make their lives better. But also, one of the things that I've literally seen for the first time this year is a lot of grief aware advertising. Like, I got a message from someone on my list that does content for moms, and she sent an email out like 2 weeks ago that was like, we know Mother's Day is hard for some members of our community. So, if you want to opt out of any Mother's Day related emails, in our community, click here. And I literally wrote her back, and I was actually thinking of unfollowing her because a lot of her stuff is for like new moms and pregnant women and this, but just that, I was like, it was so thoughtful. And again, kind of tying the thread together of everything that we're talking about here, like it's another data point for her, like who in her community doesn't even want Mother's Day content, like, candidly, again, because of the kind of services she can do, she could probably imagine maybe some of them have lost her mom, but a lot of them are probably struggling to get pregnant or with infertility or miscarriage, which is all going to be beneficial information for her for what she's programming for like her entire client base. And she can learn what percentage of her client base doesn't even want to engage with Mother's Day and all of those things that to your end, like it's a better experience for them. And it's more information for her, not only about what she markets, but even about what she creates in the future, which again is to your point, like something that brands can do too, is kind of like, actually, here's a question for you. Have you ever seen like super negative feedback to an ad or a marketing campaign? And then what did you advise the brand to do after that?
Yeah, so I can. So I did a campaign for Netflix, Black Mirror. Actually, I think it was season 3. I think it was. And for anyone who's watched, you've watched Black Mirror, right? Have you, Sarah? You seen Black Mirror before? Oops, I think you
I
might.
have
You might
not.
not.
I have not
Okay.
seen it.
All right. So I would highly recommend. Black Mirror is about basically the use of technology, right? Modern technology you see on a daily basis, and how it basically has ruined humanity, like completely, right? It's really scary stuff when you watch it because it's like, oh my god, this could actually happen. But it's all about use of data, mobile devices, and AI, artificial intelligence, and robotics, and all this type of stuff. Very real today type of stuff. So the brand came to me and said, okay, we want to scare the shit out of as many people as possible, just like the show, right? Using technology. How can we do that? So the idea I came up with was, okay, well, location data allows me to understand who an individual is, and allows me to know where they live as well. Why don't we literally scare the fuck out of people by showing them a shady location we saw them at, and then telling them we know where they live, and then showing their house address and a picture of the outside of the house in the ad. So the ad that ran was it was like this small banner on the
Yeah,
mobile device.
that would bother me. That would bother
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
That would make
It,
me feel scared.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. So we didn't get the shady locations part from legal. Their legal team wouldn't allow us to do that, because what I wanted to really do was, okay, like, hey John, we saw you at, JJ's strippers club last night, and you know what I mean. But like, they're like, no, you can't do that. So what we ended up just doing is house address. So the way the ad worked is, serve the ad. It made your bottom of your screen look like it cracked, so just kind of drive focus down to it for a quick second, and then we showed a copy that said, we know what you're watching, but do you know who's watching you? And then we showed a picture of the outside of your house with your home address, and people freaked the fuck out. Like, it was up for like probably less than a couple days, because every single publisher that ran it was getting tons of messages and emails from their users saying, this is horrible. Are you tracking me? You put my house in an ad. And so like everyone was blaming the publisher. So we took it down like most of the campaign. But what was great about it is that's what the brand wanted. So it was actually a positive thing. I didn't expect people to react the way they did. But like
Oh,
the
I would
client was
have
actually happy
lost
with it.
my mind. I'm so grateful it didn't target me.
Yeah, it was wild, but it was a fun one for sure.
Wow, that's incredible. And I also invited Stephanie back up as a producer in case my sound goes out again. So I'm not like,
Okay.
what? Did I watch it? But gosh. Well, that's doesn't here's what's interesting. Well, you kind of answered that like an interview question. Like when someone
Yeah.
says, like, tell me your greatest weakness and you turn it into a strength. I'm like, tell me something that bombed. And you're like, actually, the client loved it. But that is an interesting example, again, to this point of like, what's your goal? And like
Yeah.
to your point, if their goal was to almost like sensationalize, what's going on with
Yep.
social media and everything, to your point, they achieved it. I mean, what do you see? I guess my next question for you would be as kind of like what's next and everything that you're working on. I know that you're super dialed in. I know that you got everyone who wasn't in Vegas on private Zooms that you didn't invite me on. So like what's next?
I think when we talk about what's next in advertising and technology, everyone's talking this NFT shit and everything. It's like, for me, it's just annoying. I'm so over it. Like, everyone in the fucking mother, like 95% of everyone who's on Clubhouse is an NFT expert now. It's like, what the fuck happened, right? And then metaverse and whatnot. Here's the thing: VR and all that type of stuff is cool, but I think that the future is in AR, right? Like in VR, it's great. Like, cool, I can go in these spaces, and like I still got no legs, right? So I'm just like a torso, head, and arms. And it still like feels very much a little cartoonish, right? When we get it to like this, then I think it gets someplace, and it will. But I think AR, augmented reality, is where it's going to be at, because we have to think, we went from these giant computers, right, to like laptops, and it was like, holy shit, like I can now take my laptop out of my office and into my backpack and into my car and then into a Starbucks and actually work in there, right? And then when we got the first iPhone came out, it was like, oh my god, and we could do email and all that. It's like, oh my god, now I can actually leave my laptop in my car, right, or wherever, or in my
Mhm.
backpack, and I can walk into a mall and I have this thing in my pocket now. Or then I think the next move is like, oh my god, I can leave my mobile device now in my car, because when I go out, I'm wearing these, right? And now when I walk around, right, we're using things like object identification, and I'm looking at a product and I see overlays and things right there. So we're moving from this space of typing and clicking with a mouse to touching and swiping to then speaking, right? So how we engage with brands is going to be entirely how you speak to a brand, right? So when I go someplace and I look at product, it's going to say, this product is $29.95. Would you like to purchase that? Yes. Okay, which card would you like to use? My Visa. Bing, done. It'll be to you and whatever. Like, it's going to be that type of experience. And I think that we're not crazy far away. What I'd love to know is who's a technology provider who's out there right now and creating a database of objects, right? Object identification.
Mhm.
I know that Amazon has been doing some stuff. They rolled out a thing with their Echo device for people with vision impairments, where you hold a product in front of the camera, and you say, I think it's like Alexa, what is this, or what product is this, whatever, and it'll tell you. I don't know the extent of how, the products that they do it. So that's there. And I think that's most certainly the way of the future. So a designer today, those people who do like UI design and they're like pixel pushers and all that, like they're prominent in everything that we do in advertising today. But 10 years from now, it is going to be entirely about copywriters. Copywriters are going to make all the fucking money because copywriters are going to be charged with understanding the tone of a brand and how they speak, and then how you engage.
Should I get back into copywriting, Walt? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm telling you.
Copywriting.
I'm telling you that is copywriters will be the future.
Can I take a producer privilege for a minute on something Walter just said that I think is really important?
Please do.
Thank you so much. So, Walter, you're talking about AR, and what's fascinating is over the last 2 years, I've been helping experts across the country with COVID communications. No, I would not suggest that anybody rate my skills based on the output, because as you can see, I would hope though I had very little control at the end of the day. But we did start the conversation around AR to produce a state of empathy for people in general to combat the division and the beehives we're living in on Twitter and other products whose monetization relies on division and engagement and anger, and you're either with me or you're against me. But using AR as a way to say this is happening, and in a world that seems to say, if I'm not seeing it, if I'm not experiencing it, if it didn't touch me, then it's not happening at all. Mm-hmm. And so I think I agree with you completely on the NFT thing, but completely over it. It's that next gold rush, like it is the next protein powder. That's my opinion anyway. But I think AR is absolutely going to be the future on some very, very deep levels that are going to have an impact on society. Yes, of course, someone's going to use it for evil, but I think it can be used for really good. And in the consumer space, incredible results. So that's all I wanted to say.
No, I mean, I absolutely agree. It is most certainly the future, and it's going to be how we engage with everything. And I think it's also a way to allow for brands to, again, be a little more authentic, because now as a brand, I'm not showing up on this screen with this white background or whatnot. Like, I now can show up next to you in the room you're actually currently standing in. So we're blending those realities together, and in some sense can make you feel a little more comfortable with the brand, right? So absolutely, it is the future, and I think that when we get there, it'll be a really interesting place. So like I said, I'm trying to find, if anybody here knows like who's doing all the object identification database stuff, let me know. That's what I'm investing in.
No, I think it's super interesting. It's super interesting on a lot of fronts. First of all, it's super interesting, this idea that if we had our glasses, as you were talking about the evolution, that we could literally leave the house with nothing else. And I think it's interesting to think about the application both for branded experiences and just in life. You know what I mean? Like literally, and I don't know, like, I mean, first of all, you both know me well enough to know, like, when you said that, started thinking about all of the political applications of people, if we didn't have any of the problems anymore of like the fact that both the pluses and the minuses of almost like if everything that you needed to know about you was stored in your glasses, you know what I mean? Like, it's super interesting. And then what you're saying too about creating, I mean, what it would be like if you could create AR branded experiences through glasses, and kind of getting back to a comment that you made earlier too. I'll never forget, I was hearing someone say when people were talking about how sometimes people act differently in the metaverse or in AR or whatever, what an opportunity it is for people who are somehow limited in the space that we're in right now. So like an obvious idea would be, for example, like, someone who has a disability in this world, and then they go into the metaverse and they're able to literally interface with the world in a way like they're able to go swimming for the first time, or like whatever the case may be. You know what I'm saying? And I just think it's interesting, again, kind of like pulling the thread through all this whole conversation of thinking about the way people feel, that what would it mean for people experiencing some kind of limitation if the brand came and intersected with their life in a way that was like really meaningful in their day through something that they were wearing. Or even just like, when Steph brought up COVID, like obviously everyone's thinking about the fact that it's like, oh, well, from home, it could be like you're trying this on, or you're doing this, you're doing that. But you're saying like, how much even more integrated could it be into whatever people are experiencing? Isidro, did you have a question on that or a thought you'd like to contribute? Welcome to the stage.
Hi. Yeah. Thank you. Nice. Thank you for letting me be up here, Sarah and Walter. I just love what you're saying.
Thank you.
There's something that resonated with me when you mentioned, not to paraphrase, or I don't know if that's the right
That's
word,
all
but
good.
you see these patterns, you recognize that, and everybody could do it, right? And as you're getting into, well, Sarah's getting into the Oculus or that type of technology, AR. One of the things that anybody could do, like you spot trends. And so, for example, the Oculus thing, it's going to allow a lot of us to just stay home, but really be connected halfway across the world. But we know, like, since the advent of the television, that physical activity has declined, and then that's opened up, a lot of ailments, and the second, third generations are living with physical ailments because they don't exercise. And I'm sitting there
Yep.
going, well, the Oculus, you're going to see a lot of people going, hey, you could do exercise this, you could do that, but you look at those things, they're like bulky, and anybody knows whoever exercises for a long period of time, I mean, you're going to sweat. So
Yeah.
about 10 years ago, I think Sony filed a patent, and they got it for a contact lens of a camera. Right. And so these things, like, I mean, I just happened to read it. I grew up in San Jose, California. So I would read a lot of these things and I'm wondering why hasn't that come out? Well, the technology's still being developed. Right. And I sit there and I go, is that something that you do? Like, do you pay attention to the little things that most people don't pay attention to see, oh, that's going to be something?
Yeah, I mean, yes. And here's the thing about yes, that I mean, I do. I try to focus on like the what's next, right? But the thing is, why something like that doesn't take off is because it's too close to home. It's too personal, meaning I have to put that thing in my eye. Now, let me explain this now. Tesla. What Tesla does, so and this is like the Apple way too, right? Like, but Tesla's a great example of this. Tesla came out with a vehicle, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago, right? Great. Oh my God, this electric vehicle, cool. It's super fucking fast. It's very simple, right? Now, what they've done over the years now is like they haven't made much change, but then this last rollout of the S model and the X model, what you see now is steering wheels half the size, right? It's this like Formula One race car wheel. It's not a circle. It's like a rectangle. You hold it like this, right? There's no the sticks, the clusters, I think they're called, whatever, behind the steering wheel, those are gone, right? So now when you walk up to the vehicle, so I have an X, right? I walk up to the vehicle, the car door automatically opens for me because it recognizes my mobile device. I sit down and put my foot on the brake, the car door automatically closes. I put my seatbelt on, the car automatically turns on, and then it uses the cameras around the vehicle to determine should he be going straight forward or backwards. And then it puts me in drive or reverse, right? And then of course when I drive now, I double click this little wheel right on this little kind of spin thing on here, and boom, it goes into auto drive, and I can sit back and it drives around turns and takes turns and all that stuff. Now, why I say this is because Tesla does not need a steering wheel. Tesla does not need anything. You can get in the car. I can get in my car right now. I punch in an address, and I literally go, and boom, it just drives, comes to stop signs, stoplights, turns left, right, so on and so forth. But what they're brilliant at doing is they know that people are fearful of that technology right now. No one's going to get into a fucking vehicle that's going to go 60, 70, 80 miles an hour that does not have a brake, a gas pedal, a steering wheel, something I can control. It's that fear of losing my control over a thing. Yet it can do it. So what they do is we're going to take the clusters away. We're going to make the steering wheel a little smaller, and eventually over time, take out and take out and take out and take out until there's nothing, right? So it's like it's people are afraid of technology at such a rapid pace. They want to crawl their way through it.
It's interesting you say that. I'm sorry, real quick. Sorry, Sarah. One of my last jobs there in San Jose, actually in Mountain View, I was testing the software on autonomous vehicles for a company named Neuro. And the first time I had to make a left turn, well, the car had to make a left turn with incoming traffic, and I'm still alive. So I trust the technology. But one more quick thing before I leave.
Ask you, I'm so sorry, but I want to be respectful of Walt's time today. I will tell you, Walt actually responds to every Instagram DM. So definitely, if you have one more question, hit him up in the DMs. Well, I am so just extraordinarily grateful for you. I know how precious your time is. I can't believe you spent an hour with me and with us today. Please tell everyone where they can find you, and anything else that you want them to know. I'm so grateful you joined us today.
Yeah, and it's either hit me if that's how I said your name right. Hopefully, I apologize, and I dig your profile picture, by the way. So yeah, hit me up on Third Gears on Instagram, right? That's the easiest way, or on LinkedIn, Walter Geer, whatever. But on Third Gears or any social media platforms, it's literally the number 3RDSGEERS, Third Gears.
Thank you so much, Walt. You are literally the absolute best. I learned so much from you. I can't wait to go back and re-listen and catch all of the words that I missed. Thank you for being patient with me through the technical difficulties stuff. Thank you for coming up here to produce, because I was like terrified that I was going to get out.
All good. This is dope. This is great. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for having me. This is my first fireside chat. I dig it. It's cool. It's kind of got like Clubhouse vibes, but then it's kind of got Zoom vibes. You know, it's what's up. And happy to come back and do this again any other time. Clearly, I need to update my profile image and all that stuff. I got these little like glasses here.
Yeah,
I need to work on that.
We'll help you get your profile ready. Thank you so much, Walt. You're the absolute best, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.
Let's get the wait bot on up here.